chaps. So I did a rather long video on the Bismarck. I watched Sink the Bismarck last night, and I thought to myself, well, I just last words, I suppose, because Sink the Bismarck is a film I remember watching from when I was little. I mean, I became a fan of Kenneth More as a child, not realising that the man had died 3 years before I was born. And he happened to be in a few films my parents were always watching. And Sink the Bismarck is really one of the better war films in terms of accuracy. But like any film, even a good film, it has got some glaring inaccuracies that if you know your history and are rather serious about it, you can take the wrong way, kind of thing. Like Lutyens commanding the Bismarck, flag commanding the Bismarck, is a raging Nazi in this film. He doesn't like it when Lindemann seems to be insulting Hitler or questioning Hitler's judgment. He doesn't. He tells everyone, don't forget, you are Nazis as well as Germans. Whereas in fact, in reality, he was not a Nazi at all, really. There was Jewish blood in his family. I think his wife was Jewish or part Jewish. And there's a picture of Hitler visiting fortnight before Bismarck sailed for Gotenhafen and then beyond. And Lutyens is the only officer that's seen saluting the traditional way, not the German salute, the Deutsche Gruß, as it was known, or Hitler salute to everyone else. Also, it is based on a book that I've managed to find. I keep forgetting the images flipped, but never mind. This edition is called Hunting the Bismarck by the Hornblower author C.S. Forrester, and I've seen it known as Last 9 Days of the Bismarck. It's a semi-fictional account in that it in the film, of course, you see the hunt for it in the Admiralty, in the operations room, and Kenneth More's Captain Shepherd, who's lost a ship at Norfolk. His son's an air gunner on the Ark Royal, and Lutyens apparently sunk his ship at Norfolk, and so therefore it's personal and all this. But he also lost his wife recently in the Blitz, so he's seen as this really cold-hearted, cruel man. He does stop an officer. He denies our officer's permission to go up and see his girlfriend, who's in the Wrens, off on a troop ship. He doesn't like the informality of Christian names, that kind of thing. And the other thing about Sink the Bismarck in terms of inaccuracy, I mean, there's many, I'm not going to go into all of them, is the sinking of a ship called HMS Solent. And this is in one of the last engagements before the morning, when, the British fleet finally catches up with the Bismarck and finishes her off. And there was no ship called Solent. Hood was the only British ship lost to enemy action in the hunt for the Bismarck. The Prince of Wales was severely damaged, of course. Should have been finished off, really. Lindemann wanted permission to go after her, but maybe wisely Lutyens said no, because I guess he assumed the British were right on top of him. And the Solent. And then I'm watching it last night, and I've seen the film many times since childhood. I can't help but think the image of the Solent exploding is a clip from One Silent, One Deep, when they sink the Japanese destroyer in the Bungo Straits. I looked on IMDb, I can't find anything on there. I'll have a proper look later, but you know these things, especially when you've watched One Silent, One Deep the other week. Dive. So 80 years ago today, as it were, let's imagine it's 26th of May 1941, the Bismarck is still relatively okay, albeit she's been attacked by swordfish bombers from HMS Victorious yesterday. Ark Royal is now steaming like a nutcase into the battle area with Force H, Admiral Summerfield, out from Gibb. The Trophy ships, from KG5 downwards, are struggling for fuel. I mean, for much of yesterday, as it were, and I guess parts of today, the British assumed that Lutyens was making for the North Sea and back home to Wilhelmshaven and the like. Instead, since not long after really sinking the Hood, Bismarck has been making for Brest, or at least occupied France. It's either Brest or Saint-Nazaire. Saint-Nazaire was the only place in occupied Europe that could hold a ship that size, hence the commando raid, the with the Campbell turn in 42, largely by them for the Tirpitz, rather than because Bismarck, of course, was gone. Combination of Lütjens communicating with Group West in Paris and a Catalina flying boat piloted by an American volunteer, which was hushed up until long after the war because America was neutral at the time. Seeing the Bismarck made the British realise that they've been looking in the wrong place, or at least preparing for the wrong place. To catch up with the Bismarck, Tovey and his ships could realistically run out of petrol and be vulnerable. Should Lütjens have gone further into the Atlantic? Granted, the Atlantic's a bloody huge ocean, and even a ship of the Bismarck size could realistically get lost. Maybe she could bloody well end up in South America or something, but then that would repeat the Grass Bay. She could go so far out, turn around, come back. But then I would have thought if Lütjens had gone further into the Atlantic, the British by then would have been in a better position to stop her. You effectively only have to send groups of your groups of ships like Force H and whatever, certain points along the way. Hope to God you don't bump. Well, you will bump into U-boats, but you'll have the upper hand on a U-boat because you have force and you can just deft charge them or whatever. I mean, obviously I don't know the ins and outs, and I'm just an amateur historian, but Lütjens was probably doing better. And as far as Lütjens was concerned, and Lindemann, they weren't that seriously hurt. They still had the main armament. They put up a hell of a fight against the Hood and the Prince of Wales. All right, they had Prince Eugen. Probably should have kept Prince Eugen to help cover them. Would she have made a difference at the end? No, but then the Bismarck might have had a better chance when facing off the Swordfish from Victorious and then Ark Royal. And I don't know, you never know. I mean, this is the trouble with history. Hindsight and retrospection is all rather brilliant, but it doesn't make anything change, does it? That's not to say I would wanted the Bismarck to change, but a lot of men died on her. And there's a suggestion that before she turned turtle, she was seen to make various signals for surrender, a black flag, Morse code, a man with semaphore flags. If that's the case, then yeah, the British in a way missed their opportunity. She surrenders, the ship is still, say, seaworthy. I mean, and she gets towed back to Britain. Propaganda QI there, but also almost 2,000 men would still be alive, albeit in 1941, of course, not now. But it's all for moot, really. There's a chap who I believe is still with us, 103, who was last year interviewed in one of the tabloids, who served on King George V. He's meant to be the last person alive who heard Tovey being personally ordered by Churchill, albeit from message, to go after the Bismarck until she's gone. Said that they didn't have revenge in mind, but it's not beyond the realms of that. There were people there, including Tovey probably, who though not curdling at the mouth, frothing at the mouth with revenge in mind, wanted to get back for the Hood. The Hood was the pride of the Royal Navy. She flew the flag round the Empire and the free world. Well, it was the free world, but we won't go into that. The Empire and the world between the two wars, on goodwill missions, just showing the countries, with open days and all this, like, when we've had American carriers dock off Portsmouth, for instance, they've taken some of the locals over in boats, let them have a look around a Nimitz class aircraft carrier. Jealous. But it's, she was the name more than anything. The Hood was not the strongest or most well-equipped or most well-armed battle cruiser going. I mean, she was a bit watery compared to, say, the Admiral Graf Spee and the other Deutschlands and all the rest of it. But nonetheless, when she was sunk, it's incredible. It's a morale crusher. So the British are gradually closing in on the Bismarck, and they really need to stop her in her tracks long enough for the fleet to close in. You can send Swordfish all you like, but at some point in the next 36 hours, Bismarck will be within range of land-based German aircraft. Supposedly U-boats and the like were on their way in. Well, they got there too late, really, let's be honest. Would U-boats have made much difference? Possibly. The British could have been so concentrated on pursuit that, and with low fuel and that could... I mean, look at what happened to the poor Gloucester at Crete only a couple of days ago. As you see in the film, the Ark Royal Swordfish crew go up. They've told, look, chaps, not too long to go now. We're going to run out of daylight. By the way, HMS Sheffield is in the vicinity. Now, like I said in the longer video, now, all right, granted, from the air, I suppose things are differently. But the Bismarck had 2 really huge swastikas that you could land a helicopter on if you had them in those days. Bow and stern. You're telling me that is you know, or you... Surely, you look at a picture of HMS Sheffield, you look at a picture of Bismarck, surely you knew enough to tell... Sure, all right, I know it's battle. And if there were any of those chaps alive, they would probably say, you don't... Well, I wasn't alive then, but... Either way, they attacked the Sheffield by accident. Luckily for the Sheffield and in the way of those chaps, the magnetic timer things made the torpedoes explode on contact with the Atlantic. And then they got back and, you know, it was like... the Sheffield's crew have got more grey hair than they had 10 minutes earlier. You know, and they said, well, you've got one last chance. Now, I'm not knocking these men. The swordfish crews of both Victorious and Ark Royal were incredibly brave. None of them were killed during the Bismarck hunt, despite what you see in the film. But they were up against, some of them, the Victorious had inexperienced flyers. The carrier's homing beacon on the return leg failed. None of them ditched. They all recovered at any rate. Brave men, and they succeeded towards the end of 26th of May in landing, doing enough damage to Bismarck that her rudder jammed, and she was caught. The end, well, I mean, as in the film, Lutyens must surely have been somewhat devastated. Everyone realising gradually that they're doomed, because the Bismarck's now starting to turn away from Brest and occupy France. And it surprised the British initially. You know, she was seen by the Catalina or wherever at a certain point, and everyone's like, well, that doesn't make sense. Why would she turn to the British? She can't be hoping to fight over a dozen ships. You know, she should be technically at Brest. Virtually, she should see the French. But, you know, and accounts from the crew that survived, or at least the officers, the dawn of 27th of May was met with a quiet, almost funeral mood aboard the Bismarck. You know, they knew the end was coming. And in the film, Lindemann, dubbed by Robert Rietti, it's like, they outnumber us 2-1 or something like that. There were 13 ships, including the Ark Royal, bearing down on them. All with enough, except for the carrier, of course, all with enough armament to take on the Bismarck. Bismarck, she was in still at 90, 80, 70% effectiveness, could have dealt with them, possibly, I don't know, but the end came. As you see in the film, it was fairly relentless, the armament. Both revenge, but also this is the most powerful battleship ever afloat at the time. If they tried to surrender them, fine. But then you don't know, do you? The British weren't to know that no one was alive on the bridge of the Bismarck. They weren't to know. But what you don't see in the film, of course, and it's not the filmmaker's fault, is that there were attempts to try and rescue survivors. So something like 111 were pulled from the water by 2 of the ships, Dorsetshire, who had laid in what she thought was the killer blow, and the Maori. And they only had to get out of there because there was a U-boat alert, and it was like, well, bugger that. And then a U-boat and a German weather ship pulled between them, I think 3, 4, maybe 5 survivors between them. And the crew of the Bismarck was over 2,000, so... And it was a case, I think I read somewhere, that when maybe on the Dorsetshire, when the crew were being pulled, survivors were being held over the railings and they're covered in oil, and they're young lads for the most part, that they realised that propaganda is only so much true. They're not all wide, they're not all blonde, blue-eyed, steely-jawed Nazis. Some of them probably were Nazi party members, but let's not go into that. But they were young lads like them doing a war that they probably didn't want in the first place. So, but the thing is, the Bismarck got overshadowed by Crete. Crete was already a mess by the time Bismarck sunk Hood. It's a lot worse than this, and in fact the Royal Navy took absolute kicking in Crete. Forget HMS Kelly, which is the most famous sinking. They lost to Gloucester, and then a handful of other ships, something like 12 ships I think were lost, and the Axis didn't lose any. Bismarck was a major morale victory more than anything else. It removed a fantastically potent ship, but Crete was a kick in the gut. And this was still under a year before Singapore fell, and the loss of the Repulse and Prince of Wales. So thanks for this wild random tangent. Have a good day.